I'm so thrilled to see your different schools and organizations here. There isn't any better place to be in March for March Madness than the UConn campus. So it's in the air, but it's in the air every day with our athletics and with our academics. So thank you for those of you who have traveled from afar, New Haven, Bridgeport, to be here. Many of you colleagues who I've worked with, and I thank my particular Compact colleagues for being here. So, what I'd like to do today is to really take the opportunity to share with you the importance of human capital, which is what you already know and value. Human capital, social capital, and to actually give you a tool that we've been using in Compact schools. There's some information in your folders about Compact. It stands for Community, Parents, Administrator, Children, and Teachers. We're a model, an initiative that has been in the state for 7 years. We are currently in East Hartford and Meriden and Waterbury and Bridgeport. And our work is focused on the COMM and the P, the community and the parent engagement. So my colleagues, we work with schools to assess what perhaps their needs are, and then we work to identify research-based frameworks and models that work for their schools. So Waterbury and Bridgeport, I'm pleased to say, are some of our original Compact schools. Heather, you will see, and I will reference her as an asset. She is no longer a parent at Westside, but she is a parent at Westside. So as we go through the Aspire survey, I'd like you to really, I think you're going to be connecting. I'm so pleased to see so many teams here, and even though you work together, I hope today you find out things about each other that you didn't know. So I'm sure that you believe all students have gifts and talents. Yes? Yes. Thank you. So I believe that all parents, and when I say parents, I mean caregivers, have talents and gifts. And just like you work to find those talents and gifts in children, I ask you to find those talents and gifts in the parents and the families that come into your schools and your organizations. And so it's very easy as families drop their children off, or you may not see them, to feel that you don't know who they are or there's a disconnect. I have never in my life met a parent caregiver who has not cared about their child or the school. And if they have the opportunity to connect, they will connect. But we must do that in a way that values our families, and in a way that respects them, in a way that connects them in ways that are meaningful and purposeful. So, a little bit of history. I don't bake. Can I please see the hands of the people in the room who love to bake? Thank you. Love baking. So I go to Big Y when they say, bring cookies to school. Michelle is at Big Y buying them in the bakery with her silver coin. And then I have my friends who are buying the flour and the sugar, and they have all the ingredients. And I run up to school and I take the price off and I say, here are my cookies. And the kids know, oh no, you want Mrs. Roberts' cookies because I can tell they're homemade. Therein lies the skill. And I don't make copies. So traditionally, parents have had choices. You can bake, right? How many of you have children of any age in the room? Not your children, but you. So you might have elementary, you might have preschool, middle school, high school, college back home. Okay? So we've been given choices pretty much as parents engaged in school. So we can bake. We can run copies. I don't run copies. They're upside down. They're stapled in the wrong corner. The teacher says, thanks, please don't come back. That wasn't helpful. I have to do it again. And the other thing I have a choice of is I can chaperone a field trip. So I'm a former middle school principal, and to be on a bus with 65 middle schoolers when I have 3 personal days, and I'm the parent on the bus saying, turn the music down, watch, and they're all like, who are you? You're just like, come on the ride, enjoy the trip with the kids. So where we're moving with this is there's a paradigm shift in family engagement in schools. We know that legislatively. We know that through the importance of our school governance councils. We know that parents have a different role in our schools today, not only because it's legislatively mandated or statute. More importantly, parents should have a different role because we care and we value that role in our school. So what I'd like to do today is to take you through the Aspire activity as if you are parents in the UConn High School. Okay? And what that means is that we are coming together for this event, and when I do the Aspire, so I'm actually modeling it for you so you can take it back and do it. Because John Dewey 100 years ago said, we learn by doing. So I could give you great research and lectures on, I actually have some research for you that I will give to Judy out of 2 documents that I think are very important. The dual capacity that Karen Mapp has created, and Joyce Epstein's work, which is the classic research in parent-family engagement in schools. And if you're familiar, how many of you are familiar with Epstein's work? 6 types of engagement today, 3 volunteering, and 6 community involvement in schools. That's what I'm addressing. And it's one thing to say those things are important. It's another thing to say, here's the tool and how to use it. So we often go back to our schools. We know volunteering is important, correct? Remember, baking, copies, field trips. But there are other things that people can do. So you will learn that I have a passion for Shakespeare that my children say is not right. I mean, I teach Romeo and Juliet in 3rd grade because 3rd graders love their mommy and daddy. They can't imagine why Romeo and Juliet would want to run away. And I teach it in middle school because, yeah, we're falling in love. And I get that. And when I went to borrow the books from the high school, when I taught it in middle school, they said not until 9th grade. I said, so you can only read it in 9th grade? And then when you teach Shakespeare in high school, they really get it. They really understand the theme. So if you knew I love Shakespeare and that I collect memorabilia, there is Shakespeare memorabilia. I have comic books, I have, you name it, I have it. And the idea is to get really kids engaged and passionate about Shakespeare. Today we're going to find out what your passions are. It might be baking. You might really like field trips. You might really be good in your organizational skills at copying. I value all of those things. The point today is, what else can we offer as opportunities to connect our parents in meaningful and purposeful ways that are of value to them as well as to you? So we often don't take the time to ask because we often don't have the time. So as I'm facilitating this today, I'd like to share with you that we do this during the day at our schools. We offer babysitting and food. We offer this at night. I have done it one-on-one over the phone because parents cannot come in to do this. We have done it in groups of 5. I have had wonderful translators working with me because my español un poquito. And that's a skill that parents have that I don't, to be fluent in Spanish or Portuguese. And so you can determine after today, I've done it in a room of 100 people. So the reason why I asked some of you to move is ideally we want to do this in groups of 4, no more than 5. So we're going to go through and we're going to kind of experience this hands-on. I am going to interject, kind of making connections. And I'm also going to ask you at any point to raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, so while it's on your mind, to ask the question instead of at the end. Any questions so far? So you introduced each other, but by the time you leave this room, you might be walking across the room to talk to somebody. I didn't know you did that. And I want you to think the whole time, this is what's walking in and out and by our school every single day that we don't know about. And my big question and statement is, you don't know unless you ask. Do you ask? And in the busyness of our world, to take 5 minutes, I am blessed to be teaching pre-service teachers and future principals here at UConn. And part of our work is to say, first week of school, please call all your parents. And then the middle school and high school people say, you know, I have 100 parents, or I could have 200. I said, okay, then you take 4 weeks. And then I do a math lesson, and I say, let's count the phone call by, I do a math lesson. 100 parents, 5 minutes, let's divide it. How much time is that? And then how much time are you going to take when there's a reactive situation versus a proactive? So this is about building relationships. Trust, value, respect, building relationships. And you don't do that through an email, and you don't do that through a flyer and a backpack. So how we get people to the Aspire? Classroom teachers call the families and invite them in. I personally know if my kid's teacher calls me, I'm probably going to show up because they know they called me. And it's going to make me feel pretty special to think that that phone call was made. So the Aspire, when people say to me, well, there is a paper version. And when we first started doing this, we do this, for example, during conferences. Special teachers are in the hallway, specialists who are doing this with parents one-on-one while they're waiting to get into their conference. Okay? But you don't just want to hand this over and say, do it, because then you lose that connecting piece of the relationship. So this is about building community. I, the other night, had 6 real parents into my class of future school leaders, real parents. I had the leaders do it with the parents, because normally when teachers and parents come into the room, the teachers are on one side, the parents are on the other. Always count off, so it becomes a blended activity. And by the end of the night, the 6 parents who were from the same school didn't really know each other until they left. They knew their kids went to the same school. But one person gathered 6 of her friends, but they all didn't know each other. So it's about connecting, it's about building relationships, and it's about building human capacity and enriching our students' lives and our teaching through our parents that come into our schools. So that being said, is everyone logged on to the Aspire? I'd like one computer at the table, so if somebody, the way you start this is you say, who feels comfortable recording? And I have some of my colleagues that I'm going to ask them to record because they've done this before. So let me just take you through this home page. So look at, we're the Friday Cafe, UConn High School. Yes? And you may only need one there? Okay, if you only need one, that's great, then just you can close the other computer. So let me just take you through this home page. If you needed a tutorial of what I'm doing now, you could click here. If you needed 7 easy steps, if you needed to download the workbook that's on your table, the group, that's you. Let me take you through what that looks like. If you want to click on the group, you can see it at your table. So this is the group. The Aspire is an acronym. It stands for Assets, Skills, Professions, Interest, Relationships, and Environment. I refer to them as the 6 factors. And these are the factors, this is asset mapping. Okay, these are the factors that we're using. Right now, we don't have any assets, skills, professions, interest, relationships, or environmental factors identified. By the time we finish, I'm going to go back to this. Surveys is what we're going to be adding in. So when I click on Add, and again, I'll take you through this step by step. You'll see the factors. Users, when you get back to your schools and you have your own site, you will log in people who will have access to this. I will tell you right now, this is a teacher tool, an organizational tool, so we do it in organizations with boards to assess their human capital. We're actually doing it at NEAG in my Department of Educational Leadership. We're doing it with the NEAG Alumni Board of Ed to connect mentors to our students as presenters and mentors. So anyone who you put in as a user is going to have access to this. Teachers, organizations, PTO officers. You will determine who has this, but this really is a tool for teachers, for example, to be able to connect parents and community into their classrooms or their programs. Okay, so if you click down, contacts, that's what we're going to do now. I'd like you to click on contacts, and for each person at your table, I would like you to put their name, an email, and a phone number. If you don't want to put a phone number, you can put an email, but you have to put X's in the box. So, and it's important to save. I'm going to put an X here for now, sake of time, an X, and I'm going to put my position is I'm at UConn. Now, If you're doing this with parents, what you put in that last space is the year that the child or children will be leaving your school. So for example, I would put 2015, you know that I have a child graduating from high school. 2015, if that child is leaving your K-8 school. I always do this with teachers first, because they need to understand the tool in order to use it. So for organizations that want to use this and then they say, here it is, here's the Aspire, what we're losing many times is that ability to train people, to support them, and to model for them how it's used. So leaders of organizations here, central office, assistant superintendents, I am going to ask you to consider your role and the importance of you supporting this in the organization where it's used. And so what we have found in our experience is that teachers can be really excited, but if the building principal in the central office, this isn't of value. If I do a workshop and the principal introduces me and walks out, I say, okay, let's have fun for an hour and a half. I don't really expect you to use this. Does that make sense? That support and that training is so much what any organization needs to be successful. So we have district-wide family and community engagement goals. We have building level goals. We have them in our alliance grants. We have them in our commissioner network schools. We have them in climate and culture. So it's really important when you say, all right, you have to have 10 hours of volunteering. I want to see every parent 10 hours. Great, what does that look like? How do you do it? Bring in the cookies, do the copying, come on a field trip. You have 10 hours. Not the most meaningful 10 hours to me. And then you might be tracking 10 hours, but I think what you'll find in the Aspire is qualitatively you will know what people did and when. So when it was being designed, I said there must be a data piece. What's the world without data? And they're like, we don't need this as I said, no, there has to be a data piece so we know who comes in, when people are contributing to the organization or the environment, and we can track, is Michelle coming in all of the time and Heather's not being asked at all? Okay, so everybody at your table, if you could put your name in and put your information, and then we can move on with the actual survey.
Michelle,
yes, Eric.
So, could a teacher use this for just their own classroom with the parents in their group? And if they do that, and there's also a district component where the district is, I'm going to use the word not, but pushing the use of Aspire broadly, where that subgroup in the classroom can be sort of a private group so that the families, I know that there's a intended web effect,
right.
But if you just wanted it to be an effect between a more closed community, is that able to be done, and does that run too counter to the intention of the...
Good question. So there are teachers that use this in their classrooms because they want to. And so if you're thinking of using it, we all know start small, start with a positive group, if possible, who feels there's an interest in this. But what Eric is asking is also really important, because if I'm in a K-8 school and Eric is a third grade teacher that wants to do the Aspire, and I'm a fourth grade teacher and I want to do the Aspire, and Marianne's a fifth grade teacher, that fifth grade teacher can invite the third grade parents into the classroom. So the thing about the Aspire is that everybody in the school owns the human capital. So I just did this, the group of 6 parents down in Stamford, they all have kindergartners. In my ideal world, we do this as part of orientation in pre-K. We do it as part of kindergarten orientation. We do it when we bring students up to the middle school, parent orientation. We do it in 9th grade orientation. If you did this in pre-K in all your schools, can you imagine what I call human capital data you'd have for that child's success plan in high school? So it can be done within the context of one classroom. Ideally, if you go school-wide, it offers the opportunity to build the community of the parents. Those kindergarten parents, now the 7th grade teachers can invite them into the school. How wonderful that they're going to be actively engaged before their kids are in 7th grade. So again, building community, building capacity. And people have often asked me, well, can I have an Aspire for the district? You can have users who have access to the district-wide Aspire. So if you are in Willimantic, your multiple elementary schools, your middle school, the high school, you may have users who have access to all of those databases. But what you don't want to do is make users throughout all of the schools, because then you use the building of the community of the families in that school. And that's the intent. But it's not to say that if you needed someone with a particular skill, you couldn't have a multiple user who might be able to go district-wide and say, oh, they have that over at the middle school. Okay? Good questions. So does everybody have their contact information in? Okay, so here you are. So what's happening is, while you're putting this in, this is 24/7 live. You can go home and realize you didn't put an interest in, and you can just log on and you can put this in. You can be planning a unit of study on a Sunday night or an enrichment program in science and art, and you say, I want to bring an art component into my math class. Someone does art, they're going to bring Escher in, we're going to integrate it into our math class. But you can do that at home on a weekend in your planning, because I'll show you how we do a keyword search. So this information is here, and you'll see how it's going to come in as we start the survey now. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is turn to page 11, which is assets, and I'm going to take you through each factor. I do want to say that the examples in this workbook are all from our schools. So English major that I am, I didn't go home and get creative and say, hey, let's make up some assets and some skills. These are from our schools, and I'm very cognizant of when people say to me, what can parents in those schools do? And I say, really? Really? Let me show you what they can do. Urban, suburban, rural, socioeconomics, every caregiver parent brings in a gift or talent to that school. So you'll actually see what parents can do. So we're going to go to survey, and we're going to go to add, and we're on asset. And I'd like you to look at page 11. An asset is any resource in your immediate geographic area that you consider to be a resource to your school or your organization. So assets are mostly intangible aspects, history, benefits, services, organizational structures, relationship that exist apart from the school or the organization. So at your table, this is what you're going to do. Each person, I have to tell you, normally when I do this with parents, I can do it in an hour, hour and a half. With teachers, I can take 2 to 4 hours because we do it, and then I have them work in groups making connections to the curriculum, units of study, standards, extracurricular, and fundraising. Okay? But for the sake of time today, I want to take you through the Aspire so you know how to use it. So what I'm going to write is I think UConn is an asset. And I'm going to start typing my name in. It comes up, Michelle. Okay, and then you're going to hit save. So once you put that data in of the contact, it's there. So if you want to keep adding and you have 4 people at your table, do this, but make sure you save each time you add someone or we'll lose the data. So I know you're from different areas. Just for consider we're all one big high school. What's an asset in your area? And I can look at Willimantic, and I can look at the restaurants. If someone says there is a Jamaican restaurant, write it down. Your name tells me you know something about that restaurant. The other thing I want you to think about is not all teachers live in town. So these assets become for them connecting pieces into their classroom. So it can be a faith-based organization, it can be a wellness center, it can be a museum. Historically, Willimantic, our Silk Cities, Waterbury, Timex, Bridgeport, home of Barnum and Bailey. So start listing, everybody give one asset and click Save as you do it. And one person may be typing it. I'm going to leave it up to your table as to what's the easiest, how to record it. It can be in your immediate area. So Willimantic, yes. None of the other categories yet. But you can look at the categories absolutely that are listed there if you have buildings, if you have historic museums. So anything there is an example of an asset. So does everyone have one in? The other thing while you're doing this, I have to say, your alumni are assets. Heather is an asset. So down at Bassick High School, every day I'm there, I walk out of the main office and there's a lovely, huge picture of a lion, Pride of the Lions, their mascot. And one day I looked at the sign next to it and it said, Leonardo Drew, Bassick graduate. I believe it was in the 80s. International artist, recycled work. Part of our work was working on the school with community service, and the students learned that Leonardo was a graduate and contacted him. Well, Leonardo was coming back from shows off of Paris and London and out on the West Coast, and was basically encouraged, you don't need to go back to Bassick, Leonardo. But the kids wrote to Leonardo and said, we would really like to talk to you. So Leonardo lives in New York, and when he was home, before he came to Bassick High School, he sent boxes of wooden shingles to the students and asked them to artistically create an image or write something. And then he came in with his crew and he did an installation of a piece of artwork. And the kids got to talk to Leonardo about graduating from Bassick High School. So the images of Bassick High School and the capabilities of the kids became so positive in real life with Leonardo talking to them. I mean, I can be a successful artist and I can do what you're doing, and this could be a career. And what he said was, when I was in middle school, I had a mentor, and when I had really exhausted the curriculum in art, they sent me up to the high school here at Bassick and gave me a studio. So he was connected, and he became an amazing story for the kids as a model of what they could pursue. So alumni, Steven Spielberg, he went to school somewhere. I could write to him, but chances are he wouldn't respond. I want you to think about, do you know who has gone through your school system and has gone on to become a successful model that you can share? I know you have an astronaut in Waterbury that just came back to talk to the kids in the schools. I went to school here in Waterbury. So I don't let anybody define the schools I work in or where you are underperforming, really. When Leonardo Drew asked me why I was there, because it was a school improvement grant, and we talked about the performance of the school, and he said, who said they are? Who said they're underperforming? Because when he went there, his experience was anything but that. And so kids need to hear that, adults need to hear that. In our world of wanting the accountability of success and achievement for our students, I think we often miss the adult learners and the needs that they have. So the Aspire as a need is about time, and it's about training, and it's about building trust that this is something that could be valuable. So if everybody has something in, now if we click on View All, here are my assets in the room. So while you're putting this in at your table, and I only asked you for one, I want you to think, when I do this, I give each table about 10 minutes, 5 to 8 minutes to put the data in, and then we share out. Now, I'm a classroom teacher, or I work in an organization in the town or city you're from. All of a sudden, I know that if I want to know something about the Silk City, I can go to Doug Edwards, because he put that in. He must know something about the Silk City. And I'm doing an enrichment program or a lesson with my kids. I may have Doug come in and talk about the Silk City. Better yet, he may host them on a tour of the Silk City, because we're going to get creative and get grants and work together in providing enrichment activities, which many of our districts do. Okay, now you're going to leave and you're going to say, I know I have more, I know there are more things I can put in. And yes, you can. So if we turn the page from assets, there's further explanations of that particular factor. I'd like you to turn to page 15. And this is where we're going to get very engaged, because as a skill, I would like you at your table, everyone, and here's the other thing, I don't take for an answer, I don't have a skill. I never accept that. And when you start doing the Aspire, people that say that, they're like, oh yeah, maybe, and then their friends tell them, yes you do. Esther, you're a great runner. What do you mean you don't have a skill? We run together, you're a great runner. And our children, our English language learners, parents, their language is a skill. The culture of what they bring into that school is an interest. So I will tap into this when I'm in a school and I need a translator to do the Aspire. I will ask a parent to come in and I basically translate while I record the data in. Remember, un poquito. But what I have done for that hour is I have valued the language of one of my parents in my school. So when somebody says, I can't share anything, or I might just be intimidated to come into your school because I'm not comfortable, by personally inviting somebody in and making them feel valued and comfortable, you do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to surveys, add. I'm going to ask you to be careful on this one because it has a tendency to click back. Go to skill, and everybody at your table, I would like you to put in a skill you do at a beginning, intermediate, or advanced level. It is not what you do for your work. So if it's painting, I'd like you to probe, and in parentheses, the more you probe and tag, you'll see when I go to do a keyword search for something, things pop up because they're further explained. So for painting, in parentheses, I want oil, I want acrylic, I want watercolor, I want house. For cooking, I want Italian, I want Jamaican. For music, I want jazz, I want opera. So I want, if you say baking, I want brownies, I want cupcakes, I want anything that you bake that you feel is your skill. You're going to find that your skill is going to align with my interest. Okay, so everybody put a skill in. As soon as you start putting in the name of the person who has that skill, it'll pop up. So the skill belongs to you right now. And then save. It's a skill that you have. So if you like knitting, if you like ballroom dancing, if you like salsa dancing, you put that down, and as soon as you start typing your name, it'll come up. And I'll show you where the other skills come in. So I just put your skills in, and I always start with your skills. Let me do some quick. So in a world of Common Core, I would love to enrich any Common Core standard off of the Aspire, and I can do it. I've taken on the challenge. I love it. I enrich the Common Core standards so they're engaging. The Aspire is not one more thing. It's not about, here's a tool, use it. It's about making connections and making those connections in a way that are valuable. Writing letters. Persuasive writing? What a wonderful thing to have Heather come in. I love the fact that we have dancing here We have actually, off of the Aspire, done a Dancing with the Stars because we have had dancers, we have had choreographers, we have had DJs, we have had people who were caterers, and we have had halls, and I will tell you, it is the greatest community building event to have, all off of the Aspire. So, quilting, do you want to talk about a math lesson? Quilting? How about art and design? Public speaking. What a wonderful art to have somebody come in and share their skill in public speaking. Because we're often saying to our students, you're going to have to stand up and you're going to have to say, you're going to have to present. There's an art to public speaking, and I'm going to call Rachel. Okay? Look through this list. There's I've got a DJ. This is wonderful because Doug, now I've got Marianne, who's going to be doing the salsa. This is great. I'm going to have Rachel, who's going to be kind of facilitating and emceeing the event. Oh, I'm sorry, for a fundraiser, why don't we do dance lessons? $5 for an evening of dance lessons with Marianne. Would you go? So, do you want to buy the wrapping paper? Do you want to buy the chocolate? And I'm telling you, I love the cookie dough, but I also run, and I know for every tablespoon I eat how far I have to run. But if you said, we're going to do salsa dancing with Marianne, what a great fundraiser. Not only a fundraiser, it's not about the money, it's about building the community. It's about 10 people showing up for a salsa lesson. So we're going to do an auction. $5, I'm going to auction off 10 salsa dance lessons for an hour. 10 people come together. You've made your $50. It's a lot of magazines if you have more than one kid walking in a rural area where I live. Okay? How are you going to be creative? And I'm going to ask all of you in your organizations and in your schools to really foster the creativity with the people you're working with to say, oh yeah, this is how it can happen. Baking, we all know, great science lessons. Okay, we have our fractions, we can have multiplication, we can double things up. Now I want you to put in very quickly the skill of someone else in your life who loves you dearly. In other words, would never say no to you. I don't need to know who it is. I don't want to know it's my second cousin who does ballroom dancing. That's not important. This is the way it's going to look. We're going to go back to add. And this is the way it's going to look. You're going to go to add. You're going to write juggling. I'm going to put in my name. And I'm going to click on other. Michelle doesn't juggle, but she knows a juggler. So if you're doing a lesson in math, estimation, let's have the juggler in. And PTO, what I'd like you to do is to sponsor, with all the money you're raising, the juggling balls for all the kids to take home. And then when we do an evening activity with parents, we're going to teach that math lesson of estimation. The parents are going to learn to juggle, and then you're going to give them that particular standard skill to work on at home, juggling with their kids. So when anyone says we don't have time for enrichment, I say we need to take time to be creative. So one skill of somebody in your life who loves you dearly. That can be a sibling, it can be a coworker, it can be a relative. Okay, so here are all our skills now. Esther, would you donate a piece of your jewelry to an auction we're going to have? Okay, so you won't charge me what you might normally charge to. Okay, thank you. I always love when I do this and people say yes, and when they're like, eh. Okay. So now, you're doing a play at your school. Callie knows an actor. I have someone for costuming. I have someone for designing. I have somebody to do the stage and scenery. I didn't have to leave the room. How many times have we sat around and said, does anybody who can bake, who can organize? That person who organizes for a skill is my best friend. So when I have an event, I want that person on my committee.
So we were just talking here, it was a little bit of effort for me to think of who I knew that had a skill that I could put in here. And I said to you said, I could see you put home improvement on there, we need somebody to build a set, I'd be like, heck do I know this? That's home improvement. And Jocelyn suggested I could put in the description like brother-in-law or some kind of clothing, so that when somebody calls me and asks, I'll remember who I was thinking. You
could do that if you'd like to do that. Again, what you would normally do is to say, I'm calling, I've got, this wonderful information from the Aspire survey you participated in. But the more you tag, okay, then you will have that opportunity if you want to remember that. Here's the thing, you also have the option to always say no when somebody calls you. So there should never be a discomfort level of you have to do something. But I might have Esther come in for a math class on beating and counting with very young children or middle school age children or parents getting together for an activity to build community with parents. So when I see all of my runners in here, I want you to get creative with how can we integrate the runners into our school? Let's start a running club. We're looking at wellness. And so there's a school that has a running club with over 60 runners that the teacher has organized. There are a lot of parents who are runners who can come and run with the kids during that time and would love to do that. I will take the slow kids in the back, and then somebody who's doing those marathons can wait, right? Because do we not differentiate in athletics as well? Are there not kids that are faster runners? And there might be parents who have an interest in running but don't run but want to come to that activity and learn with the kids. Your interest is my skill, okay? So the way that you can look at this, and I want to point this out now, is you can go to the top and by description, it'll alpha. By type, it'll group it. By contact. But you know what? We do have an event coming up, and I need bakers. There they are. So I've keyword searched baking. The bakers come up. I make the contact. Okay, and I know who does what. I have 3 bakers right there. Michelle's not running the Big Y. She can do something else for you. Okay? So, what you continue to do with the Aspire is you go back to your surveys. I want to view all, but if you click view all, look at this, sewing. When you click on the description, this is the data piece. Let's see, Charlene herself does the sewing. She can tag on costumes, dresses, suits. Oh, nobody's used it. Yes, I used it. I used it today on Friday. And Charlene came in for 60 minutes. And I'm going to write in here the description that I connected it to a math standard, the enrichment activity that she did. And then I submit it, I save it. When I go back to my surveys, view all, you can see in the right-hand column that was used once. You click on it, you have access then for knowing when they came in and what they did. Where this helps me in the final data piece I'll show you, we tend to have the same parents in all the time. PTOs, they should really only have 7 members. The same 7 parents. And every school universally, internationally, there are 7 parents who facilitate the PTO. And I'd say that with admiration because they do an incredible amount of work, but they don't have to do it all themselves. Because for certain events, maybe I can only help you by organizing that one event. Maybe Mary Ann can only come in and do salsa dancing once for 1 hour. That's great. Maybe I'm great at organizing and I can do Excel sheets and I can't come into the school, but I can take your information and put it into Excel sheets at night when I get home from work or when the baby wakes up at 2 in the morning and goes back to sleep and I can't. That's my contribution to your school. So when people are engaged, it doesn't always have to be there. It's how can you tap into their gifts and talents to engage them in the right way. So as you go through this, I'm going to share with you how you would continue to do this because it's described, because I want to get to a few key things here. If you go to profession, you would ask families for any profession or work experiences that they have had. I'm very cognizant of people that may be unemployed in any district, unemployed. And so we say, what work experiences have you had, paid or unpaid, that you've done in your lifetime? And so when somebody says, I just stay at home, there is no such thing as I just stay at home. That's a valuable profession. If somebody says, I just work at a McDonald's, I go, you have wonderful HR skills when the fries are cold and the line is backed up and you have to do a little bit of triage so your customers are happy. There is value in every single person's work experience for you to find. So it may be past, it could be present, it may be paid or unpaid. That's not the point. What are those professional, kind of factors? Put in the profession of someone in your life who loves you dearly. And then click Other and Save. Profession of someone in your life who loves you dearly. If it's an attorney, is it a real estate attorney? A mediator? If it's a doctor, pediatric? So the more you can clarify. If it's an engineer, mechanical, chemical, environmental, in parentheses. So Diana, I have a tutor here. Are you the tutor or somebody you know? Okay, brother. I really want to remind you of the professions of retired professionals who are young, who have capacity to share, who will come in and do engineers, work on robotics with your kids, who are retired teachers, who are grandparents that want to come in and read. So when I see somebody that says, my group, when I hear my class is too large at 20, I think of some schools I'm in at 32 students in a classroom, and I'm thinking of sitting down in a professional learning community or a data team, because what I do in those instances is I pull out the Aspire and I say, what are the needs of the student? Do you need a retired teacher to come in and work in small group settings, reading with your kids and working on comprehension? Or I go into a middle school, and because I'm a former English teacher and the teacher's one-on-one, working in a situation with a student, conferencing, and I'm like, can I come in and give you an hour to do one-on-one conferencing with kids and their edits on their paper? But you don't know that unless you ask. So my skill's not baking, but it could be editing. It could be publishing. And let us not lose sight of our high-end learners because they're above proficient. The kids that are getting bored and disconnected, here are your mentors. Get them in a small group, have the engineer come in and work with the kids. Why? Because you need to identify your kids' interests before you can engage them. You need to identify your parents' and caregivers' interests before you can engage them. And once you make that connection, there will be kids who like Shakespeare. I've experienced it. It might have been a small number, but they loved Shakespeare. One of my students was from Argentina that came to my middle school. Loved Shakespeare. Yes, working on his English proficiency. Loved Shakespeare to the point when we did a one act of Romeo and Juliet, he translated it into Spanish, and we did a version that we presented to the families. How do you make the connections so they're valuable for everyone? So now you not only have here your career day, but you have mentors for kids. As we move in the state towards personalized learning, which is fabulous, here are your personalized learning interns and mentors, individual or small groups of kids. So what you would do is you go through the survey, is you would also, I'm going to just, it's all explained in the book, but if you add interest, I would ask the families, the parents, the teachers, what's an interest you have that if you had all the money in the world you would do? All the money and time. I would love to run. Great. There are people who have skills in running. I would love to be a nurse. Great. We have parents who are nurses who can talk to you about that professional trajectory. Your interest is my skill. But we are going to do relationships before we finish today because it's my absolute favorite factor. Under relationships, I would like to know at your table, and it's going to be S for self or O for other, who do you know that's a mover and a shaker, rich and famous, can be a CEO of a company, it can be a musician in another country, it can be a politician in another country, it can be a professional athlete. If it's your second cousin's third boyfriend, I don't need to know that. You put NFL player, your name, other. And then let's talk about kids doing a writing skill of letters to someone. Who do you know that's a mover and a shaker? Do you know the governor? Do you know CEOs of companies? Is there a professional musician in your family? I think there is, Bill. Are your former students? And what's going to happen is you're going to leave and you're going to be like, I do know somebody. So I would write down Michael Jackson's personal photographer and my name because I know who that is. So when you're doing a fundraiser, you're going to ask me for 3 signed books that he's photographed and published and auction them off. Or you're going to have him talk to a bunch of kids about what their experiences are as a photographer.
So Michelle, the self or other on this?
Self or other. Right. You know them directly or you self. And if it's somebody that you know who knows them, it's other. So we have a dancer in the Big Apple Circus, NFL player, CEO of Waste Management. Thank you for writing meteorologist, one of the dance moms. So if you know somebody that knows that person, it's other. So again, I want you to start thinking about how the R makes connections back into your curriculum, your enrichment. This becomes 6 degrees of separation, 3 degrees. A jazz trumpeter, a musician, professional athletes. And chances are you have students who are very interested in all of this. I also want to be mindful, because I am of all kids, career or college. And where is the skill here? If I have an auto mechanic and I know I don't own an Audi, but I know they're expensive to repair, that's a skill that someone has. The vocational tech schools that we have, the skills that come out of the schools of students who are going into careers, how can we connect them early on? How can we have that mechanic in 2nd grade? Not middle school, not in 11th grade. How do you enrich the kids of your lives at very early ages? So here you have, who knows who, John Legend. Every day I would walk past the administrative assistant to the principal at Bassick High School, only to find out eventually that her brother was John Ratzenberger, Cliff on Cheers. And that John Mayer's mother was a high school English teacher at Bassick. Fundraiser? What can they do? That we had Dr. Oz as personal trainer as a parent, and his wife made incredible cupcakes. And that we had Morgan Freeman, somebody's cousin, was his personal driver for 7 years. So why not have John Ratzenberger come in, show a Pixar film, because he's the voice of Pixar, have it be a community thing, and have the kids participate in the film, and then talk to them about acting and filmmaking. Wrapping paper, Pixar. The last factor that comes in here is environmental, and it explains more in detail. Assets and environmental sometimes overlap. So I would write down Mansfield Hollow, waterways, land trust, LEED buildings downtown, solar panels. Anything environmentally that's, you can see the asset. In our community, the land trust is an asset because the kids go cross-country skiing there and use it as their running trail. But it's also an environmental factor because it's a preservation of land in a day and age where that could be very minimal in some towns. I did an Aspire with Spanish-speaking parents. One was from El Salvador, one was from the Dominican Republic, and 2 were from Peru. They all expressed an interest in reading to my students. I invited them in and they were so amazing. They loved reading and the students loved having them share some of their favorite books. We were also able to talk about children's books that they loved growing up. I invited the parents back to share their books. So on the inside of your books, there's a demo site called Cavonia. And again, you will be able to go on. You won't be able to add anything to it, but you can see it. I'd like you to take a look at the data piece. This can tell me by grade level, by teacher, by the type of factor I used. So grade level teacher, again, all the time. It can tell me by week, month, quarter. I'm going to go all the time. And I actually, when I clicked on to show you the description originally and put in that somebody came in on March 27th for 60 minutes, here's my collective database. It can tell me who the teachers are that are inviting parents in. So school leaders, I want you to think about this as promoting, as we should in the seed, the development of teachers. If they have a professional goal, that is to engage parents and community in their classrooms. The goal might be, I am going to aspire all of my parents, Eric, in my 3rd grade class by the end of November. And then from December through June, I'm going to have 2 parents in a month. And as a supervisor, I can help to proactively support a teacher's growth in the area of family and community engagement. It's not a gotcha. If a new teacher says to me, I'm uncomfortable, I don't speak Spanish, and all my parents do, I'm like, you're uncomfortable. So get somebody with a skill in that. Let's do some quick math here. I have 50 teachers in my school. School-wide goal, we're going to use the Aspire. Everybody's going to have 2 parents in a month. In my day and age, in 1978, when I started teaching, I would find those people in something called the Yellow Pages. All they have to do is go to a database now. Okay? So if everybody takes that ownership of getting their parents in the database, it's an access resource for the whole school. Take care of your 20 to 30 kids. That's your goal. But everybody gets the access to that enrichment. 50 teachers, 2 parents a month. It's 100 parents a month into my school times 10 months. 1,000 parents or community members in your school. Does anybody have that so far? Not only do you have them in your school, because you could say, all right, I did 10 pizza parties and 100 people came. Woohoo! If you're doing that, you better also be integrating, hopefully, an enriched lesson as you're building your community of pizza. But what's better? I had 1,000 people in eating pizza, or I had 1,000 people in. They donated jewelry. They came and started a running club. They did aerobotics with my students. They did art lessons. Because we're cutting arts and we're cutting music, and don't say, can't do it. Of course you can do it. Because all you have to do is ask. So it's about the trust. It's about building the relationships. The last thing I will end with is, we see a lot of artwork with kids in schools. We walk in, we see beautiful artwork, and we don't often see the caregivers of those beautiful children. Parents, grandparents who have skills, interest, work experiences. So we hang found posters. Look what I found. I found somebody who's a gourmet chef. That would be me. I'm not really, you can tell by the counter. So it's a reward for Stanton Elementary School that this parent is a gourmet chef. So a tool like anything is as good as you use it. So you could collect all this human capital data. It won't become social capital or professional capital unless you use it. And many of you can probably say you at one point in your life filled out a form that said, do you have an interest in volunteering? What do you want to do? And you've never been called. So this is about using it. When we went into this school and we hung 30 of these posters up, and the third graders all looked around as I was hanging them saying, there's Johnny's dad, look what he does, he's a big Johnny. They got excited. And then one little boy looked and he said, but were they all lost? Now I had to meet some social emotional needs. Say, no, they're going home. Johnny's father's there. It's all right. Don't be worried. Okay. So at any rate, we went through that very quickly. When you do this in a group, it is engaging. It builds community. It brings value. It brings trust. It brings respect. It brings everything that we need to do to achieve success in schools. It is your framework for building. It is the foundation that will give you the academic, social, emotional successes that you need. So think about how you can make those connections in valuable ways, how you can use it in your organization or in your school, and how I can pretty much guarantee that people will feel an integral, valued part of your school, community, or organization. So, and you can key on the description or at the top columns or keyword search in. Remember that keyword search in. Everything that you need to know on a night when you can't sleep is in that book. And if it's so thrilling, there's we have really the extended, the original version that's 130 pages that will give you more details than you probably thought of, but it's all on the website. I want to thank you for participating in this today. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.